I sat in my dimly lit apartment, the flickering light from my desk lamp casting shadows across the walls. The remnants of a half-finished manuscript lay scattered in front of me, words escaping my grasp like elusive phantoms. I was on the cusp of a breakthrough, or at least I thought I was, when the shrill sound of my phone sliced through the silence. It rang insistently, pulling me from my thoughts. I glanced at the caller ID, frowning at the unfamiliar number. My heart raced a bit. Probably a telemarketer, I muttered to myself, but curiosity got the better of me. I picked up the receiver. "Hello?" I said, my voice echoing slightly in the stillness of the room. But there was nothing on the other end. Just silence. A heavy, oppressive silence that pressed against my ears. I waited a moment, hoping for a response, but the line was dead. I hung up, shaking my head in disbelief. I returned my attention to the manuscript, but the words wouldn't come. Instead, I found myself staring at the phone, the eerie feeling of being watched creeping over me. Minutes later, the phone rang again. My stomach twisted in a knot of unease. I picked it up, my heart pounding in my chest. "Hello?" I said again, more tentatively this time. Silence. Just as before. I slammed the receiver down, frustration boiling within me. What the hell is going on? I muttered, my mind racing with possibilities. A prank? A malfunction? I let out a deep sigh, pushing back my chair and standing up. I paced the room, trying to shake off the unsettling feeling that had settled over me. I needed to get out. I grabbed my jacket and headed for the door. As I stepped into the cool evening air, I felt a shiver run down my spine. The streets of Willow Creek were quiet, almost too quiet. The kind of quiet that makes the hairs on the back of your neck stand up. I walked towards the library, hoping the familiar scent of old books and polished wood would soothe my frayed nerves. Upon entering, I was greeted by the comforting warmth of the library. The soft glow of the reading lamps illuminated the rows of books that lined the shelves. I spotted Mia, the librarian, hunched over a desk, perusing a stack of returns. She looked up as I approached, her brow furrowing with concern. "Lucas, you look pale. Everything all right?" she asked, her voice laced with worry. I shrugged, forcing a smile. "Just strange phone calls. They keep dropping before I can answer. It's probably nothing." Mia's expression shifted, her curiosity piqued. "Strange phone calls? You're not the only one. I've heard chatter among the patrons about it. People saying they're getting calls from unknown numbers, and then they just drop." I felt a chill run through me. "You mean to say others are experiencing this too?" "Yeah, a few of them. There's been a lot of talk about it lately, especially with the recent deaths in town. It's unsettling." She leaned in closer, lowering her voice. "Some say it's connected to the deaths, like some kind of omen." I shook my head, trying to dismiss her words. "Come on, Mia. That sounds like the stuff of urban legends." "Maybe," she replied, her tone serious. "But it's hard to ignore the timing. Ever since those accidents started happening, the calls have increased. It's like the whole town is on edge." I felt a knot form in my stomach. "Have you heard anything specific? About what the calls say?" Mia shrugged, her eyes darting to the floor. "Not really. Just that people feel uneasy after they receive them. Like they're being watched or followed." I swallowed hard, the weight of her words settling heavy on my chest. "What do you think we should do about it?" "Maybe we should investigate," she suggested, her eyes lighting up with determination. "There has to be a connection. If people are scared, we owe it to them to find out what's going on." I hesitated. The idea of delving into something so dark and mysterious was daunting, but the thought of not knowing gnawed at me. "All right," I finally said, my voice steady. "Let's see what we can uncover." Mia smiled, a spark of excitement igniting in her eyes. "Great. We can start by talking to some of the people who've received calls. Maybe we can find a pattern." As we began to brainstorm our next steps, I couldn't shake the gnawing feeling of dread that had settled in my gut. The thought of facing whatever darkness lay ahead was terrifying, but with Mia by my side, I felt a flicker of hope. We were in this together, and perhaps, just perhaps, we could unravel the mystery that had gripped Willow Creek in its chilling embrace. Later that evening, as I returned home, the phone rang once more. I glanced at the caller ID, my heart racing. It was the same unknown number. I hesitated, my hand hovering over the receiver. Should I answer? With a deep breath, I picked it up. "Hello?" I said again, my voice steady despite the rapid beating of my heart. This time, I heard a faint whisper, a voice that sent shivers down my spine. "You're next," it said, before the line went dead. I dropped the phone, my breath hitching in my throat. What did it mean? I felt the walls of my apartment close in around me, the familiar space suddenly feeling foreign and menacing. I staggered back, my mind racing with thoughts of Mia, of the townsfolk, and the darkness that seemed to be lurking just beyond the veil of normalcy. The next day, I met Mia again at the library. "You won't believe what happened," I said, my voice trembling as I relayed the chilling message I'd received. Her eyes widened, a mix of concern and determination flashing across her face. "Lucas, this is serious. We really need to get to the bottom of this before it's too late." Together, we plotted our course, determined to uncover the truth behind the calls. I couldn't shake the feeling that we were standing on the precipice of something much larger and more sinister than we could imagine. As we delved deeper into the mystery, I sensed the shadows of Willow Creek closing in around us. The air was thick with unspoken fears, and I couldn't help but wonder if we were digging too deep, risking too much. But with every passing moment, I knew that we had to press on, for the sake of the town, and for the sake of our own sanity. The phone continued to ring in the back of my mind, a constant reminder of the darkness that was creeping closer, and I couldn't ignore the feeling that time was running out. The air in Willow Creek was thick with unease, a palpable tension that seemed to seep into every corner of the town. It was an ordinary Wednesday, or at least it had started as one. I was tucked away in my usual corner of the library, surrounded by the comforting scent of old books and polished wood, when the hushed whispers of the patrons caught my attention. "Did you hear? Mrs. Henderson got a call last night." The same number that Sarah had. The voice trembled slightly, barely above a whisper. I glanced up from the book I was pretending to read, my heart racing. That number, the same mysterious one that had been haunting Lucas and me, had now reached another resident. The news of Sarah's tragic accident still lingered in the air like a ghost, and hearing her name invoked a wave of dread within me. I set the book down, my curiosity piqued. The group of townsfolk huddled together, their expressions a mix of fear and disbelief. I recognized a few of them, Mrs. Thompson, the town's gossip, and Jake, a local mechanic who had always been a bit of a skeptic. "It's just a coincidence," Jake grunted, rolling his eyes. "These calls don't mean anything. People are just scared because of what happened to Sarah." But Mrs. Thompson shook her head vigorously. "You can't ignore it, Jake. Sarah got that call right before her accident. It can't be just a coincidence." I felt a shiver creep down my spine. I had to know more. I stepped out from behind the shelves and approached them. "What exactly did she say?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. Mrs. Thompson turned to me, her eyes wide with fear. She said the phone rang, but when she answered, there was just silence. Then, a few days later, well, you know what happened. I nodded, feeling the weight of her words settle heavily on my shoulders. The last time Lucas and I had discussed this, things felt different, less urgent, perhaps. But now, with the news of another call, it felt like we were standing on the precipice of something terrifying. After the small group dispersed, I decided to seek out Lucas. I found him in his usual spot, a small coffee shop just a block away from the library. He sat in the corner, his laptop open, but his eyes were distant, lost in thought. I slid into the seat across from him, unable to hide my unease. "Lucas," I said, my voice barely above a whisper, "have you heard? Mrs. Henderson got the call too." He looked up, his brow furrowing. No, I hadn't. But it doesn't surprise me. It feels like this is escalating, doesn't it? Yeah, I replied, biting my lip. I can't shake the feeling that it's connected to Sarah's accident. It's like we're being watched or something. Lucas leaned back in his chair, his gaze penetrating. What do you think we should do? We can't just sit around and wait for the next tragedy to strike. I sighed, the weight of responsibility settling on my shoulders. We need to investigate. There has to be something linking these calls, something we're missing. He nodded, determination flickering in his eyes. Then let's start with Sarah. We should visit her house, see if there's anything there that can give us a clue. It didn't take us long to reach Sarah's house on the outskirts of town, the once vibrant paint now peeling and fading in the sunlight. A chill ran down my spine as I stepped onto the porch. Memories flooded my mind, Sarah's laughter, the way her eyes would light up when she talked about her dreams. All of it felt tainted now, overshadowed by the tragedy that had befallen her. Lucas knocked on the door, but there was no answer. The house felt abandoned, as if it had been swallowed by grief. With a quick glance at each other, we pushed the door open. It creaked ominously, as if warning us to turn back. Inside, the air was stale, thick with dust and memories. I felt an overwhelming sense of loss wash over me. This place feels empty, I murmured. Lucas nodded, the tension in his shoulders evident. Let's check her room first. She might have left something behind. We made our way upstairs, the wooden steps creaking beneath our weight. Sarah's room was at the end of the hallway, the door slightly ajar. I pushed it open, and my heart sank. The room was untouched, as if Sarah had just stepped out for a moment. Her bed was neatly made, her books lined up on the shelves. But it was the sight of her desk that caught my attention. A small stack of papers lay there, and among them, I spotted a familiar notebook. Lucas, look, I called, rushing over to the desk. I opened the notebook, my hands trembling slightly. It was filled with Sarah's beautiful handwriting, her thoughts spilling onto the pages. And then, I saw it, a section dedicated to her recent experiences with the phone calls. Listen to this, I said, reading aloud. I received a call last week. The number was strange, and when I answered, it was silent. I thought it was just a prank. But then, I felt a chill run down my spine, an overwhelming sense of dread. I can't shake the feeling that something is coming for me. Lucas's expression darkened as I read the words. This is exactly what we're dealing with, he murmured. It's like she knew something was wrong. As I turned the pages, I found a drawing tucked between the sheets, a child playing in a field, surrounded by flowers, but at the edge of the drawing, a shadow loomed. My breath caught in my throat. What do you think this means? I don't know, Lucas replied, his voice low. But it feels like a warning. We spent the next hour scouring her room, hoping to find more clues. In the corner of the closet, I spotted a small box. I pulled it out and opened it. Inside were photographs, snapshots of Sarah's life, filled with laughter and joy. But as I sifted through them, I found one that made my heart sink. It was a picture of her with a group of friends at the park, but in the background, there was a shadowy figure lurking, barely discernible. Lucas, look at this! I exclaimed, holding it up. Do you see that? He squinted at the photo, his expression shifting from curiosity to concern. What the hell is that? It looks like a person. I felt a cold shiver run down my spine. Do you think it could be connected to the calls? Maybe it's been following her. Or maybe it's something more sinister, he replied, his voice heavy with worry. We need to find out who else has received the calls. The atmosphere in the house was oppressive, filled with an aura of sadness and unanswered questions. I glanced at my watch, realizing how late it had become. We should head back to the library and see if there's anything in the archives about the town's history. Maybe we can find connections to the calls. As we made our way back downstairs, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched. Every creak of the floorboards sounded like a whisper, every shadow seemed to shift menacingly. Lucas paused at the front door, his brow furrowing. "Do you hear that?" I strained my ears, and for a moment, I thought I heard the faintest sound of a phone ringing. My heart raced as I glanced at Lucas, who looked equally unnerved. "It's probably just the wind," he said, though his voice was shaky. "Or maybe it's the call," I whispered, feeling the weight of dread in my stomach. "We should hurry." We left the house, the door creaking closed behind us, and the chill of the evening air enveloped us. The library loomed ahead, a beacon of knowledge in the growing darkness. As we entered, the familiar scent of old books and leather filled my lungs, but the comfort it usually brought felt distant now. We headed to the archives, a dimly lit room filled with dusty tomes and forgotten stories. I pulled out a thick volume chronicling the town's history while Lucas rummaged through the shelves for anything that might relate to our investigation. As I flipped through the pages, I stumbled upon a mention of a tragic accident from decades ago, an event that had claimed the lives of several townsfolk. "Lucas, come here, you need to see this." He hurried over, peering over my shoulder. "What is it?" "There was a series of deaths in the town about 50 years ago. They say it was caused by a curse linked to the founders." "Cursed? What do you mean?" Lucas asked, his eyebrows knitted together. I read aloud. "It says here that after a botched ritual to protect the town from disaster, the founders unwittingly unleashed a malevolent force. The town has been plagued by mysterious deaths ever since." Lucas leaned closer, engrossed. "This could be the key to understanding the calls. If the curse was never broken, then maybe the phone calls are a part of it." The realization hit me like a cold wave. So, Sarah's call, and now Mrs. Henderson's, they're all connected to this curse. "Exactly," Lucas said, his voice low and urgent. "We need to uncover what this ritual was. Maybe there's a way to break the curse." As we delved deeper into the archives, the weight of the rain was relentless, drumming against the window like a heartbeat that refused to fade. I sat in front of my computer, the flickering screen illuminating the dark corners of my apartment, and I couldn't shake the feeling that something was very wrong. Willow Creek had always been a quiet place, a town with its share of secrets, but the recent deaths were becoming more than just whispers in the night. They were like shadows, creeping closer, threatening to engulf us all. My thoughts were interrupted by the sound of my phone vibrating on the desk, a shrill ring that echoed in the stillness. I reached for it, half expecting another call from Mia, but as I glanced at the caller ID, my heart sank. It was that same unknown number again, the one that had been haunting not just me, but the entire town. I hesitated, my fingers hovering above the screen, before finally declining the call. It was futile, it always was. The calls never lasted long enough for me to answer. Just as quickly as they came, they vanished, leaving behind a sickening sense of dread. Later that evening, I decided to pay Mia a visit at the library. She had become my confidant in this strange ordeal, and I knew she shared my growing concern. The library was a sanctuary, a refuge from the chaos outside, but even its comforting walls felt oppressive lately. As I entered, the familiar smell of old books mixed with the faint scent of pine from the wooden shelves grounded me momentarily. Mia was at her usual post, her brow furrowed in concentration as she sorted through a pile of dusty volumes. "Lucas," she exclaimed, looking up with a mixture of surprise and relief. "I was just thinking about you." "Good thoughts, I hope," I replied, trying to inject some lightness into the atmosphere. "Depends," she said, a hint of a smile playing on her lips. "I heard some more rumors about the calls today. Did you get another one?" I nodded, feeling the weight of the situation settle between us. "It just keeps happening. And each time, someone else dies." Mia's expression grew serious, her eyes darting to the clock on the wall. "I know. I overheard a group of residents discussing it earlier. They're convinced it's a curse or something like that." "Curse?" I scoffed, but even as I said it, I felt a flicker of doubt. "It sounds ridiculous." "Maybe, but they're scared." She leaned closer, lowering her voice. "And I can't blame them. Remember Sarah? I found out she received one of those calls, too." My stomach twisted at the mention of her name. Sarah had been one of Mia's closest friends, and her tragic death had hit the community hard. What else did they say? They think it's connected to something from the town's past. Something dark, she replied, glancing around as if the books themselves might be listening. We should look into it. I felt a rush of determination. Let's do it. We need to figure this out before it's too late. With a shared sense of purpose, we delved into the library's archives, poring over old newspapers, town records, and anything that could shed light on the mystery. Hours passed, and the library's warm glow contrasted sharply with the chilling tales we uncovered. The stories of Willow Creek's founding were steeped in tragedy, deaths, disappearances, and whispered rumors of a dark past that seemed to taint everything it touched. Look at this, Mia said, pointing to a faded article that detailed an incident from the town's early days. It mentions a series of unexplained deaths that happened after a ritual was performed by the town's founders. A ritual? I frowned, the word sending shivers down my spine. What kind of ritual? Something about seeking forgiveness or justice for a wrong done, she explained, her fingers trembling slightly as she turned the brittle pages. It says they believed they could appease the spirits of those they had wronged. But it didn't work. Instead, it seemed to invoke a curse. I leaned closer, reading the words that felt like they were woven from nightmares. And now it's happening again, isn't it? The calls, the deaths, it's all connected. Exactly, she whispered, her voice heavy with the weight of realization. We need to find out what they did, and if there's any way to stop it. The tension in the room was palpable as we continued our research, piecing together the fragments of the town's history. It felt as if we were unearthing hidden truths, secrets that had been buried for decades. As we dug deeper, I discovered a disturbing pattern. The names of the deceased from the past mirrored those we had lost recently. It was as if the past was clawing its way back into the present, demanding to be acknowledged. Lucas, Mia said, her voice breaking through my thoughts. What if we're not just dealing with a curse? What if there's something more to these calls? What do you mean? I asked, my heart racing. What if they're not just random? What if the calls are a way for the spirits to communicate? To warn us? She looked at me, her eyes wide with fear and curiosity. What if they're trying to tell us something? I considered her words, a chill creeping down my spine. You mean, like a warning? Yeah, she said, nodding. Maybe they want us to know what happened. Maybe we have to figure it out to break the cycle. The room fell silent as we absorbed the implication of her idea. It was a terrifying thought, but something about it resonated deep within me. Perhaps the calls were more than just a harbinger of doom. Perhaps they held the key to understanding the darkness that loomed over Willow Creek. We need to talk to someone who knows more about the history of the town, I suggested. There must be someone who remembers the old stories, someone who lived through the events. Mia nodded, her expression resolute. I know just the person. There's an old man who used to be a historian at the local museum. He might have some insights. With a plan in motion, we left the library, stepping into the rain-soaked streets of Willow Creek. The downpour blurred the streetlights, casting an eerie glow on the pavement as we made our way to the museum. The town felt different now, as if the air was thick with tension and anticipation. When we arrived, the museum was dimly lit, the exhibits casting long shadows across the floor. We found Mr. Hargrove in a back room, surrounded by stacks of books and dusty artifacts. He looked up as we entered, his eyes narrowing with curiosity. Ah, young ones. What brings you here on such a night? He asked, his voice a gravelly whisper. We need your help, Mr. Hargrove, Mia said, her tone urgent. We're investigating the recent deaths and the mysterious phone calls. We think it's connected to something in the town's past. His brows furrowed as he leaned back in his chair, studying us. You've ventured into dark waters, my friends. The past of Willow Creek is not one to be trifled with. We know, I replied, leaning forward. But we have to understand it. We've found references to a ritual and a curse. Can you tell us more? Mr. Hargrove sighed, rubbing his temples as if the weight of the town's history pressed down on him. The founders believed they could control the spirits of the land. They thought they could right their wrongs through rituals, but they awoke something they could not control. Awoke what? I pressed, my heart racing. Anger. Grief. He paused, his gaze drifting to the window as rain pattered against the glass. The spirits of those wronged were not silenced. They became vengeful. Mia leaned closer. So the calls, they're connected to the spirits? They're trying to reach out? Indeed, he said, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. Those who receive the calls are marked. They are being summoned. The spirits want justice, and they will not rest until they get it. The weight of his words hung heavy in the air, and I could feel a cold dread creeping into my bones. Is there any way to stop it? To appease them? Mr. Hargrove's expression darkened. The only way to appease them is to confront the past, to acknowledge the wrongs done. But be warned, what you find may not be what you expect. Mia and I exchanged glances, the unspoken understanding passing between us. We had to go deeper, to uncover the truth that had been buried for too long. But as we left the museum, the rain continued to fall, and I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched by something far older and more powerful than ourselves. As we walked back to the library, I could feel the weight of history pressing down on us. The phone calls would not stop until the spirits found their peace, and it was becoming increasingly clear that we were entangled in a web of fate that we could not escape. The darkness of Willow Creek was not just a tale of the past, it was a living, breathing entity, and it was hungry for recognition and resolution. We need to find out what the founders did, I said, determination fueling my voice. We need to figure out how to break this cycle. Mia nodded, her expression fierce. Together, we'll uncover the truth. And as the rain continued to pour, the air was thick with an unsettling quiet as Lucas and I made our way toward the cemetery. The sun hung low in the sky, casting long shadows that danced eerily across the overgrown grass. I could hear the crunch of leaves underfoot, a sound that seemed to echo louder than any heartbeat. With every step, the weight of the past bore down on us, and it felt as if the very ground we walked upon was steeped in sorrow. Are you sure about this? I asked, glancing sideways at Lucas. His brow was furrowed, and I could see the doubt in his eyes, but there was also a flicker of determination. We need to understand this, he replied, his voice steady, though I detected a hint of uncertainty. The pattern, the names, the dates, it all has to mean something. I nodded, though my heart raced with trepidation. The stories I'd heard whispered through the library were starting to feel all too real. We were about to delve into a history that had claimed lives and haunted the town of Willow Creek for decades. As we reached the wrought iron gates of the cemetery, I hesitated. What if we find something we're not ready for? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Lucas stopped, turning to face me. We can't let fear hold us back. If we don't confront this, we'll never know how to stop it. His eyes bore into mine, and I felt a rush of courage mixed with dread. I guess you're right, I said, forcing a smile to mask my anxiety. Let's do this. We stepped through the gates, the clang of metal reverberating behind us like a warning bell. The cemetery was overgrown, tombstones leaning at odd angles, some half buried in weeds. It felt like a forgotten place, a resting ground for lost souls. Look over there, Lucas pointed to a cluster of headstones that stood together, their inscriptions barely legible. As we approached, I felt a chill running down my spine. The names were familiar, echoing from the conversations we'd overheard in town. Do you recognize any of these? I asked, brushing away the foliage to reveal the dates. He squinted at one of the stones, a name etched in fading letters, Sarah Thompson. Died May 5th, 1985. I gasped. That's the same Sarah who received the call, Lucas finished for me, his voice low. We stood in silence, the weight of her memory pressing down on us. As we continued to examine the tombstones, a pattern began to emerge. The dates all seemed to cluster around the same time of year. It's almost as if something happens every spring, I mused aloud. Spring, the season of rebirth, Lucas replied thoughtfully. But for Willow Creek, it seems to bring death. Suddenly, something caught my eye, an inscription that stood out among the others. Look at this one, I said, pointing to a stone that looked newer than the rest. It says, in memory of the lost souls, may they find peace. Lucas knelt down to inspect it. This feels different. Almost like an offering. He traced his fingers over the engraved words, and I felt a shiver run through me. What do you think it means? I asked, my voice trembling slightly. I don't know, but it feels significant, he said, standing back up. Maybe it's a clue. We need to dig deeper. We walked further into the cemetery, the atmosphere growing heavier with each step. The trees loomed overhead, their gnarled branches intertwining like skeletal hands reaching out for us. Do you feel that? I whispered, my instincts on high alert. What? Lucas replied, his gaze scanning the surroundings. It's like, the air is different here, I said, a sense of foreboding creeping into my gut. Yeah, I feel it too, he admitted. It's almost as if the place is alive with memories, and they're not all good. As we reached the furthest corner of the cemetery, we stumbled upon an area that appeared to have been disturbed recently. The earth was freshly turned, the soil dark and loose. Someone's been digging, Lucas noted, crouching down to inspect the ground. It looks like it hasn't been long since they were here. Do you think it's connected to the calls? I asked, my heart racing. It's possible. Whoever is digging here might be trying to uncover something that they think will help. Suddenly, a rustling noise broke the silence, and we both turned sharply, our hearts pounding. Did you hear that? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Yeah, Lucas replied, his eyes narrowing. It came from over there. He pointed to a nearby thicket, and against my better judgment, I followed him as he approached the sound. Stay close, he warned, his voice low. We pushed through the underbrush, our footsteps muffled by the thick foliage. As we stepped into a small clearing, I froze. In the center lay an old, weathered artifact, a stone tablet, half buried in the ground. Its surface was covered in strange symbols and markings that seemed to pulse with an energy of their own. What is this? I breathed, stepping closer. I don't know, but it looks ancient, Lucas replied, kneeling beside it. These symbols, they look like something out of a history book. I knelt beside him, tracing my fingers over the carvings. It feels powerful, I said, my heart racing with a mixture of excitement and fear. Do you think it could be connected to the curse? I think it might be, Lucas said, his eyes wide with realization. If this tablet was part of the ritual, it could hold the key to understanding what happened in Willow Creek. As we examined the tablet, I felt a chill in the air, and the hairs on the back of my neck stood on end. Lucas, do you think we should we touch it? I asked, my voice trembling. I think we have to, he replied, his determination unwavering. If this is connected to the calls, then we need to know what it is. With a deep breath, I reached out and placed my hand on the cold stone. Instantly, a surge of energy coursed through me, and images flashed behind my eyes, visions of the past, of a time long forgotten. I gasped, pulling my hand back as the world around me shifted. What just happened? I don't know, Lucas exclaimed, his face pale. Did you see something? I think so, I stammered, trying to gather my thoughts. There were people, they looked scared, like they were trying to escape something. Escape what? I don't know, but I felt their desperation. It was like they were trapped in a cycle, I replied, my heart racing. Lucas looked at me, his eyes filled with urgency. We need to figure out what this tablet is, and how it relates to the calls. This could be the key to breaking the curse. Just then, a loud shout echoed through the cemetery, and we both jumped. Hey! What are you doing here? A voice boomed from behind us, and we turned to see a group of townsfolk approaching, their faces twisted with suspicion. Lucas started, but the leader of the group, a burly man with a scowl, cut him off. You shouldn't be digging around here. This is private property. We're not digging. We found something, I said, my voice shaking. What did you find? The man pressed, stepping closer. It's a tablet, Lucas replied, trying to remain calm. We think it might be connected to the recent events in town. Connected how? One of the other townspeople asked, crossing their arms. We're trying to understand the curse, I said, feeling the weight of their skepticism. We believe it's linked to the calls. The burly man scoffed. You kids don't know what you're messing with. Leave this place and don't come back. But we have to, Lucas began, but I placed a hand on his arm, sensing his frustration. Maybe we should go, I whispered, not wanting to escalate the situation. Lucas hesitated, his gaze lingering on the tablet. But we're so close to understanding. Lucas, we can come back. We need to be smart about this, I urged, glancing at the approaching townsfolk, their expressions hardening. With a reluctant sigh, Lucas nodded. Fine. But we'll be back. As we backed away from the clearing, I could feel the oppressive weight of the townsfolk's gaze on us, and I knew they didn't understand the gravity of what we were trying to uncover. Once we reached the cemetery gates, I felt a mix of relief and frustration. We were so close, I lamented. I know, Lucas replied, running a hand through his hair. But we'll find a way. We have to. As we stepped out of the cemetery, the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows behind us. The sense of urgency grew as we walked away, the weight of the tablet's secrets heavy on our shoulders. The air in the small, dimly lit room was thick with tension as Mia and I sat across from the local hypnotist, a peculiar man named Dr. Harrow. He had an aura of mystique about him, draped in a long, faded robe that seemed to carry the weight of the town's shadows. The flickering candlelight danced upon his face, casting eerie shadows that blended with the unease settling in the pit of my stomach. I could barely concentrate on the task at hand as the sound of the telephone ringing in my mind echoed relentlessly, a reminder of the darkness looming over Willow Creek. Are you both ready? Dr. Harrow asked, his voice calm yet piercing through the air like a knife. His eyes bore into ours, as if searching for the truth hidden deep within our souls. Mia nodded hesitantly, her fingers fidgeting with the hem of her sweater. We need to understand what's happening, and if this can help, her voice trailed off, but the urgency was palpable. I swallowed hard, my throat dry. Yes, let's do this. I felt a mix of fear and determination. We had to confront the past, the mystery that entwined us all, especially after the chilling stories we had unearthed. Dr. Harrow gestured for us to sit comfortably in the plush armchairs, which seemed out of place in the dimly lit room. As we settled in, he instructed us to close our eyes and take deep breaths. I tried to clear my mind, but the images of the town's tragedies flooded back, each death, each call, the faces of those we had lost. Now, I want you to focus on your breathing, Dr. Harrow instructed softly. Inhale deeply and exhale slowly. Picture yourself in a safe space. I imagined standing in the library, surrounded by the comforting scent of old books, but it quickly morphed into a scene from the past, an image of Sarah's laughter echoing through the aisles before it turned to silence. I felt a shiver run down my spine. Good, Dr. Harrow continued, his voice a soothing balm against the chaos in my mind. Now, I'd like you to think about the connection you have with the events surrounding Willow Creek. Let the memories surface. As I focused, darkness enveloped me. I saw flickers of shadowy figures, the founders of the town, each with a look of desperation etched on their faces. I could hear a faint whisper, a chant that seemed to rise from the depths of my memory. Suddenly, Mia's voice broke through my thoughts, almost as if she were speaking directly to me. Lucas, it's so heavy. Can you feel it? I can, I replied, though I wasn't sure if my voice reached her. In this trance, we were connected, our fears merging into a singular entity of dread. Let the memories come, Dr. Harrow coaxed. Allow yourself to explore what lies buried. A scene unfolded before me, an old, crumbling chapel surrounded by fog. The air was thick with anticipation. I saw people gathered, their faces twisted in fear as a ritual commenced. The founders stood at the altar, chanting in a language I couldn't understand. I felt a pull towards a figure at the center, a man with dark hair and piercing eyes. "Stop!" I shouted in my mind, as if I could interrupt the past itself. "What are you doing?" "Lucas, what do you see?" Mia asked, her voice breaking through the haze. There was a tremor in her tone, a mixture of fear and curiosity. "There's a ritual," I murmured, my heart racing. "They're trying to appease something. It's wrong. They're scared." Mia gasped. "Is that why the call started? Because they didn't succeed?" "Yes." I felt the weight of the revelation crash over me. They summoned something they couldn't control, something that's still here. Dr. Harrow's voice was steady, guiding us deeper. "What does the figure at the altar represent? What is its significance?" The vision shifted, and I saw a flash of a woman, her face streaked with tears. She's trying to save them. But it's too late. Too late for what? Mia pressed, her voice strained as if she too was caught in the grip of the vision. "Too late to break the cycle," I whispered, the realization dawning on me. She's one of the victims. But they don't know it yet. This is how it all began. As I spoke, the scene flickered, revealing the faces of the founders once more. They were desperate, their eyes wide with panic, as if they could feel the weight of the curse settling upon their shoulders. My mind raced with questions. What had they done? What had they unleashed upon Willow Creek? "Focus, Lucas. What else do you see?" Dr. Harrow urged, his voice a lifeline in the storm of my thoughts. "I see a child," I stammered, the vision shifting again. "She's playing in the dirt, unaware of the chaos around her. But she's important. They're doing this for her." Mia's breath hitched. "A child? Who is she?" "I don't know," I admitted, frustration creeping into my voice. "But she represents innocence, something they're trying to protect, yet they're losing everything." Suddenly, the vision darkened, the chanting growing louder, wrapping around me like a thick fog. I felt a surge of energy, a pull towards the altar. I can't stay here," I shouted, panic rising within me. "Fight it, Lucas." Mia cried. "You have to remember. We need to know what happened." "Remember what?" I snapped back, feeling the pressure of the vision tightening around my throat. "What can we even do with this knowledge?" "Break the cycle," Dr. Harrow commanded, his voice rising above the chaos. "You must confront the truth." With a great effort, I pushed against the dark tide, images swirling around me like a tempest. I saw faces, my own family, their expressions twisted in sorrow. My heart raced as I realized they too were part of this legacy. "No, it can't be." I screamed inwardly, the connections drawing tighter. "Lucas." Mia's voice broke through once more. "What's happening to you?" I'm linked to this," I gasped, struggling to keep my thoughts clear. "My family, they were involved. They knew. They didn't stop it." "Stop what?" she pressed, urgency lacing her voice. "Whatever was unleashed," I cried, the realization hitting me like a freight train. "It's in our blood. It's why we're here. We're part of the story." The scene warped again, and I found myself standing in front of a mirror, my reflection twisted and distorted. "This is what it means," I murmured, feeling the weight of my ancestry press down upon me. "We're all part of this curse." The room began to fade, the darkness pulling me back as Dr. Harrow's voice grew distant. "Lucas, Mia, you must return. Face what you've seen." With a jolt, I opened my eyes, gasping for breath. The room was the same, but the air felt different, charged, electric. Mia was staring at me, her eyes wide with fear. "Lucas, what did you find?" she asked urgently. I shook my head, still reeling from the experience. "It's worse than we thought. The founders, they tried to protect something, but they ended up dooming us all." Mia's face paled. And we're connected to it? To them? Yes, I breathed, the weight of the truth settling heavily upon my shoulders. We have to confront this. We have to find a way to break it. Dr. Harold leaned forward, his expression serious. You both have touched the surface of something profound. But remember, understanding the past is only the first step. You must be careful with what you uncover. I nodded, but deep down, an unsettling feeling churned in my stomach. The burden of knowledge felt heavy, and I couldn't shake the feeling that we were only beginning to scratch the surface of a darkness that had haunted Willow Creek for far too long. It was a stormy night, the kind that made the shadows in my apartment feel alive. I sat at my desk, staring at the blank page before me, the cursor blinking mockingly. The wind howled outside, rattling the window panes, and I could hear the rain slapping against the glass. I had been trying to write, to immerse myself in a world of fiction, but the reality of Willow Creek was too heavy on my mind. The mysterious phone calls, the deaths that plagued the town, how could anyone focus on anything but the chaos surrounding us? Just as I began to lose myself in the silence, it came again, the shrill ring of my phone, cutting through the tension like a knife. My heart raced as I picked it up, feeling a sense of dread wash over me. I glanced at the caller ID, but it was just a string of numbers I didn't recognize. I hesitated for a moment, my fingers hovering over the screen, before I finally pressed accept. Hello? I said, my voice barely above a whisper, as if I was afraid of summoning something sinister. Silence. Hello? I repeated, my brow furrowing in confusion. Then, just as suddenly as it had started, the call ended. I stared at the phone, bewildered. It had happened again, another call that left me with nothing but a sense of foreboding. I tried to call back, but it went straight to voicemail. Frustration bubbled inside me, but I had no idea who to turn to, so I let it go. For now, at least. The next day, I met Mia at the library. She was flipping through the pages of an old book, her brow furrowed in concentration. I approached her cautiously, unsure if I should mention the phone call, but something compelled me to do so. The weight of the events unfolding in our town felt too heavy to bear alone. Mia, I began, my voice low. Have you heard about those strange phone calls? She looked up, surprise flickering across her face. You too, she asked, her eyes wide. I thought I was the only one. People are saying they've been getting calls from an unknown number. It's terrifying. I leaned in closer, lowering my voice. I received one last night. The call dropped before I could even say anything. Her expression shifted, a mix of fear and intrigue. I've heard rumors that the calls are connected to the recent deaths in Willow Creek. My best friend, Sarah, mentioned something about receiving a call right before her accident. A chill ran down my spine. I had always felt a connection to Sarah, even though I had never known her well. I could only imagine the kind of turmoil Mia must have felt after losing someone so close to her. We need to find out more, I said, my resolve strengthening. Maybe there's something behind these calls, something we can uncover together. Mia nodded, determination replacing fear in her eyes. Let's investigate. We can start with Sarah's house. Maybe there are clues there that could help us understand what's happening. As we made our way to Sarah's home, the weight of our mission pressed heavily upon us. The streets of Willow Creek were eerily quiet, the usual sounds of life replaced by a haunting stillness. It felt as if the town itself was holding its breath, waiting for the next tragedy to strike. Arriving at Sarah's house, we stepped inside, the air thick with memories. Mia led the way, her heart visibly aching as she scanned the rooms. We found ourselves in the living room, where pictures of Sarah as a child adorned the walls. She had been so full of life, smiling, laughing, and full of dreams. I could feel Mia's sadness radiating from her as she traced her fingers over the frames. Look, she said suddenly, her voice cracking. There's a video here. She picked up a dusty old VHS tape, her fingers trembling slightly. I think it's from Sarah's birthday party. We set up the old television in the corner of the room and inserted the tape. As the grainy footage flickered to life, I felt an overwhelming sense of nostalgia. Sarah appeared on the screen, a young girl with bright eyes and a contagious smile, surrounded by friends and family. They laughed, played games, and for a moment, the weight of the present faded away. But then, as the video continued, I noticed something strange. In the background, a shadowy figure moved just out of frame, lingering at the edge of the yard. My heart raced. I turned to Mia, who had a similar look of concern on her face. "Did you see that?" I asked, pointing at the screen. She nodded, her brow furrowing. "It's like something was watching them. I can't shake the feeling that it's connected to the call somehow." After watching the video, we dug through Sarah's belongings, hoping to find something, anything, that could help us piece together the mystery. In her bedroom, Mia stumbled upon a small diary tucked beneath the bed. She opened it carefully, her eyes scanning the pages. "Lucas, look," she exclaimed, her voice rising with urgency. Sarah wrote about the calls. It says here that she received one just before the accident. She was terrified and thought it might be a warning. My stomach dropped. "What does she say about it?" Mia's eyes widened as she read aloud. She describes hearing a voice that spoke her name and mentioned something about the chosen, that she had been marked somehow. She thought it might be a joke at first, but then she started to see things. Shadows moving, whispers in the dark. I swallowed hard, the reality of what we were uncovering setting in. "We need to take this to the police or someone who can help us." Mia shook her head, a mix of fear and defiance in her eyes. "No. We can't just hand it over. We need to understand it ourselves first. If what Sarah experienced was true, we could be next." The tension in the air grew thicker as we left Sarah's house, our minds racing with possibilities. The weight of the diary felt heavy in my hands, a reminder of what we were up against. As we drove back to the library, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched, that something was lurking just beyond our view. Later that evening, I found myself tossing and turning in bed, the echoes of the day's discoveries haunting my thoughts. I couldn't escape the feeling that I was being drawn into something far darker than I had anticipated. Just as I began to drift off, my phone rang again, piercing the silence of the night. Heart pounding, I fumbled for my phone, praying it wasn't another unknown number. But when I saw the screen light up, my breath caught in my throat. It was the same number from before. The call felt like a noose tightening around my neck. I hesitated, the weight of dread filling my chest. Should I answer? What if it was another warning? Finally, driven by a mix of curiosity and fear, I answered the call. "Hello?" I said, my voice shaky. "This is your last chance, Lucas," came the voice on the other end, distorted and chilling. "You've been chosen to face the truth. Secrets don't stay buried forever." My stomach twisted, and I felt a cold sweat break out across my skin. "Who is this?" I demanded, my voice rising in panic. "You know who I am. You just haven't accepted it yet." The voice paused, and I could feel the weight of their words pressing down on me. "You must confront the past. It holds the key to your future." Before I could respond, the line went dead. I sat there in the darkness, my mind racing. What did they mean by the past? What truth was I meant to face? I felt a deep sense of unease settle in my bones, the shadows in my room seeming to shift and dance as if alive. The next day, I met Mia again, my mind still reeling from the call. "Mia," I said, urgency lacing my voice, "I received another call last night. It was different. They mentioned something about facing the truth and confronting the past." Her eyes widened. That's exactly what Sarah wrote in her diary. She felt like she was being pulled back to something that happened a long time ago, something connected to her family. I nodded, the pieces of the puzzle beginning to intertwine in my mind. "I think we need to dig deeper into Willow Creek's history. There has to be something that ties all of this together." Mia's expression turned serious. "But Lucas, what if we're not ready for what we find? What if it puts us in danger?" I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of my own fears. I know it's risky, but the calls won't stop. And neither will the deaths. We have to try, for Sarah and for everyone else who's suffered. Mia reluctantly agreed, and together we began to unravel the threads of our town's dark history. But deep down, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were standing on the precipice of something much larger than ourselves, a force that had been waiting, hidden in the shadows, ready to claim its next victims. The rain hammered down on the windshield, distorting the view of the road as Mia and I drove deeper into the woods surrounding Willow Creek. Each raindrop felt like a warning, a reminder of the weight we carried with us. Our hearts raced, not just from the eerie atmosphere, but from the resolve we had found in our shared quest. We had decided to confront the curse that gripped our town, and now we were heading to the sacred ground where it all began. Are you sure this is the right way? Mia's voice broke through the tense silence, laced with concern. She fiddled nervously with the frayed edge of her jacket, her eyes darting between the trees that seemed to loom closer with each passing moment. I glanced at the GPS once more, though I knew better than to trust it in these parts. It has to be. The old map from the library pointed us in this direction, I reassured her, though I felt the same knot of doubt tightening in my stomach. We just need to find the clearing. It should be marked by the ancient oak. The deeper we drove, the more isolated we became. The trees closed in around us, creating a suffocating cocoon that made it hard to breathe. I could feel the weight of the town's history pressing down on me, the memories of those who had suffered and the secrets that were buried beneath the earth. I could sense Mia's unease, but I needed her to stay strong. We were in this together. Minutes stretched into what felt like hours, and just as I was about to suggest turning back, we broke through the dense foliage and into a small clearing. The ancient oak stood tall and proud in the center, its gnarled branches reaching out like skeletal hands. I parked the car and we stepped out into the rain, the chill of the air wrapping around us like a shroud. Wow, Mia breathed, taking in the sight of the oak. It's beautiful and terrifying at the same time. Yeah, I replied, feeling a strange connection to the tree, as if it were a sentinel guarding the secrets of our past. This is where it all happened. The ritual, the mistakes. Mia shivered, pulling her jacket tighter around her. Do you really think we can break the curse? I mean, what if we make things worse? I turned to her, searching her eyes for the resolve I knew we needed. We have to try. If we don't confront this, it's only going to get worse. People are dying, Mia. We can't just stand by. She nodded, though I could see the flicker of fear in her eyes. Okay, let's do this. But if things get out of hand, we need to promise each other that we'll stop. Agreed. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what lay ahead. We walked toward the oak, its bark rough against my palm as I placed my hand on it. This tree has seen so much. It deserves to be heard. Mia knelt down, brushing away the damp leaves that covered the ground. Look at this, she said, pointing to a series of symbols carved into the earth. These must be the markings from the ritual. I knelt beside her, tracing the symbols with my fingers. They look like they're part of a larger pattern. I felt a chill run down my spine as I recalled the stories the old man had told us about the ritual and the consequences of its failure. We need to find a way to recreate it, but correctly this time. Do you think we can even remember what they did? Mia asked, her brow furrowing in concentration. It's been so long since anyone spoke about it. I don't know, I admitted. But we have the old records and Sarah's diary. We can piece it together. And we have to trust that the spirits will guide us. As we continued to inspect the area, I felt a strange energy pulsating beneath the surface. It was as if the very ground resonated with the echoes of the past. Suddenly, a loud crack of thunder boomed overhead, making us both jump. Let's hurry, I urged, glancing up at the dark clouds swirling ominously above us. I don't want to be out here when the storm hits. We set to work, gathering stones and twigs, trying to mimic what we thought the original ritual might have looked like. Mia's hands worked deftly, her determination shining through despite the rain soaking us to the bone. Lucas, what if we're just making it worse? She asked again, a tremor in her voice. I can't shake the feeling that we're not supposed to be here. Then we'll leave, I replied firmly, but not until we've tried. I met her gaze, willing her to see the urgency in my eyes. We owe it to the people who have suffered, to Sarah. We can't let fear stop us. As we arranged the stones in a circle, I felt a growing sense of purpose. Each stone felt like a piece of the puzzle, each twig a connection to what had come before. But as I laid the last stone in place, a cold wind swept through the clearing, carrying with it a whisper that sent chills down my spine. Did you hear that? Mia's voice was barely above a whisper, her eyes wide with fear. I nodded, my heart racing. It's just the wind, right? No, it was a voice, Mia insisted, her breath quickening. I swear it was a voice. I turned my ear to the wind, straining to catch any hint of what she had heard. What did it say? I asked, my voice low. I think it said, leave. She looked at me, her expression a mix of fear and defiance. We need to get out of here. Before I could respond, the phone in my pocket buzzed violently, startling both of us. I pulled it out, the screen lighting up with an unknown number. My heart sank as I recognized it, the same number that had haunted us for weeks. It's the number, I stammered, my hand shaking as I held the phone between us. Should I answer it? No, Mia exclaimed, her eyes wide with panic. Don't. It's a trap. We can't, but before she could finish, I felt an overwhelming urge to pick up. With a rapid breath, I pressed the green button. Hello? I spoke into the phone, my voice shaking. Silence. For a moment, I thought I had made a mistake. But then, a soft voice came through the line, chilling me to my core. Lucas, who is this? I demanded, my heart pounding in my chest. What do you want? The voice chuckled darkly, sending a shiver down my spine. You've come to the right place. To break the curse, you must first confront your past. What do you mean? I asked, glancing at Mia, whose face was pale with fear. Your secrets are not your own, Lucas. They are tied to the very foundation of this town. You must choose, will you let the past consume you, or will you rise above it? The phone clicked, and the call ended abruptly. I was left standing there, breathless, staring at the device as if it held the answers to everything. Mia's voice broke through my reverie. Lucas, what did it say? What do we do? I could feel the weight of the words pressing down on me. It said my past, my secrets are tied to this curse. I don't even know what that means. Mia took a step closer, her hands trembling. We can't ignore this. If there's a chance that confronting your past could help break the curse, we have to figure it out. As we stood in the rain, the wind howling around us, I realized we were at a crossroads. The weight of the town's history was heavy on my shoulders, and I was afraid of what I would uncover. But I also felt a flicker of hope. If we could confront the truth, perhaps we could change our fate. I looked up at the ancient oak, its branches swaying in the storm. We need to dig deeper. There's something I haven't told you, something that's been haunting me for years. Mia's eyes widened. What do you mean? I took a deep breath, feeling the enormity of the moment. Years ago, I was involved in an accident. It was my fault. A friend almost died because of me. I've carried that guilt ever since, and I think it's connected to this. Lucas, she whispered, stepping closer, her expression softening. You didn't know. You were just a kid. But I've never forgiven myself. And now, it feels like I'm being punished for it, I admitted, the weight of my confession hanging heavily in the air. What if I'm the reason this curse exists? Mia reached out, placing a reassuring hand on my arm. You can't keep blaming yourself. We have to confront this together, whatever it is. As the rain poured down and the wind howled, I felt a surge of determination. It was time to face the shadows of my past. Together, we would uncover the truth and break the cycle of pain that had haunted Willow Creek for far too long. But as I looked at the ancient oak, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched, that the spirits of the past were waiting for us to make our move. As I stood there, the weight of the phone in my hand felt heavier than it ever had before. The rain pelted down outside, a relentless rhythm that matched the tumult inside my head. I was on the verge of uncovering something monumental, something that could change everything I thought I knew about myself and the cursed town of Willow Creek. "Mia," I said, my voice barely rising above the sound of the rain. She was sitting across from me at the small wooden table, her brow furrowed in concentration. "I just received that call, again." It was different this time. The voice, I hesitated, searching for the right words. The voice sounded familiar. It mentioned my family. Mia looked up, her eyes wide with concern. "What do you mean? Did it say anything specific?" I took a deep breath, trying to steady my racing heart. "It said something about my ancestors, and a secret I've never told anyone. I don't even know what that means." Mia leaned closer, her interest piqued. "You have to tell me everything. What did it say exactly?" I closed my eyes, trying to conjure the voice that had invaded my thoughts just moments ago. It was a whisper, almost a shadow of a voice I should recognize. It mentioned the name of my grandfather, Harold. I don't know much about him. He passed away when I was young, and my family never spoke of him in detail. "Maybe that's where your answers lie," Mia suggested, her tone encouraging. "If there's a connection between your family and the founders of this town, we need to dig deeper." I nodded, feeling a mixture of dread and excitement. I had always felt a certain distance from my family history, a disconnection that now seemed to be pulling me into the very heart of this mystery. "Let's start at the local historical society. They'll have records. Maybe I can find something about Harold." Mia smiled, a glimmer of hope in her eyes. "I'll grab my bag. Let's go." The Historical Society was nestled in an old brick building, its weathered facade echoing the secrets it held within. As we entered, the musty smell of aged paper and leather bindings enveloped us. Dust motes danced in the shafts of light streaming through the large windows. I made my way to the front desk, where an elderly woman with thick glasses peered at us over the edge of a ledger. "Can I help you?" she asked, her voice crackling like the pages of a well-loved book. "Yes," I replied, my voice steady despite the flutter of nerves in my stomach. "I'm looking for any records related to my grandfather, Harold. Harold Miller." The woman adjusted her glasses and squinted at her records. "Miller, you say? Let me see what I can find." As she shuffled through the stacks of paper, Mia and I exchanged glances, an unspoken understanding passing between us. There was something significant about this search, something that felt like it could change the fabric of our reality. After several minutes, the woman finally looked up. "It seems there are a few documents related to Harold Miller. He was quite involved in the early days of Willow Creek. There's a file in the back room, if you'd like to take a look." "Thank you," I exclaimed, my heart racing with anticipation. Mia and I followed the woman to a small room cluttered with boxes and shelves lined with old books. She retrieved a file and handed it to me, her fingers lingering on the edges as if reluctant to let it go. "Be careful with that," she warned. "It's a piece of our history." Once we were alone, I opened the file, revealing yellowed pages filled with notes, newspaper clippings, and handwritten letters. I scanned through them, searching for anything that might connect my grandfather to the strange occurrences in Willow Creek. "There's a letter here," I said, pulling out a brittle piece of paper. "It's addressed to the founding committee of Willow Creek." "What does it say?" Mia leaned in, her breath catching slightly. I read aloud, my voice trembling with the weight of the words. "To the esteemed members of the founding committee, I am writing to express my concerns regarding the recent events that have plagued our town. There seems to be a darkness that surrounds us, a malevolent force that we have yet to understand. It is imperative that we confront this before it consumes us." I paused, the gravity of the letter sinking in. He knew something was wrong. He was warning them. Mia's eyes widened. "What else is there?" I continued reading, my pulse quickening. "I urge you to investigate the old cemetery. Many of the founding families are buried there, and it is my belief that their spirits have not found peace. The rituals performed in the name of prosperity may have unleashed a curse upon us. I stopped again, the implications of the words crashing over me. Rituals. Curses. It's all connected. Mia, what if my grandfather was trying to stop this? What if he was trying to protect us? Mia placed a comforting hand on my shoulder. We need to find out more. This could be the key to breaking the curse. As I continued sifting through the documents, I stumbled upon a newspaper clipping that caught my eye. The headline read, "Tragic Accident Claims Life of Local Boy." The picture beneath it showed a small group of children playing. One of them was a young boy who looked strikingly like me. Mia, look at this. I pointed to the image, a chill running down my spine. That boy, he looks just like I did at that age. What is going on? She took the clipping from my hand, scrutinizing it closely. Do you think this could be related to the calls? The boy, was he one of the victims? I nodded slowly, a knot forming in my stomach. It has to be. There's something about this town, something that binds us all together through these tragedies. Mia's expression turned serious. We need to get to the bottom of this. It's not just about breaking the curse anymore, it's about understanding our past. With renewed determination, we delved deeper into the file. Each discovery felt like a thread unraveling a tapestry woven with pain and sorrow. As we pieced together the history of my grandfather and the town, I began to understand that the past was not just a series of events, it was a living entity that had shaped who I was and who I would become. Harold was involved in a group that performed rituals, I read aloud from a journal entry. They believed they could invoke protection over the town, but something went terribly wrong. I fear we have angered the spirits of those who came before us. Mia's face paled. This is it, Lucas. This explains everything. The calls, the deaths, it's all connected to your family's history. I swallowed hard, feeling the weight of my lineage pressing down on me. I never wanted this. I never wanted to be a part of any of it. But now, Mia interrupted gently, you have to face it. We both do. If we're going to break this curse, we need to understand what happened to your family and what your grandfather was trying to protect us from. I took a deep breath, realizing that the secrets of the past were not just someone else's story, they were mine. The connection was undeniable, and it felt as if I were stepping into a role I had not chosen, yet one I was destined to play. The rain continued to beat against the windows, a reminder of the storm brewing both outside and within me. Let's keep looking, I said, determination flickering to life within me. There has to be more. As we continued our search, I felt a sense of urgency growing. Each document we uncovered added layers to the mystery, revealing connections between my family and the town's founding families, all intertwined in a web of tragedy and betrayal. Mia, look at this, I said, holding up another letter. It's from a woman named Agnes, a descendant of one of the founders. She's writing about feeling the weight of the past and the burden of the decisions made in the name of progress. What does she say? Mia asked, her voice filled with curiosity. She mentions a pact made between the founding families to ensure prosperity, but at what cost? I read. Her words echo the warnings my grandfather made. They knew something was wrong, but they chose to ignore it, thinking they could control the outcome. Mia's expression hardened. It's a pattern, Lucas. They thought they could play with forces beyond their understanding. Yes, I agreed, feeling a sense of dread wash over me. And now, we're paying the price. As I turned the pages, I felt a deep sense of connection to the individuals whose stories unfolded before me. Their struggles mirrored my own, and the weight of their choices pressed heavily on my shoulders. Was I destined to follow in their footsteps, or could I break free from this cycle? Lucas, Mia interrupted, her voice steady. You have to understand that you have the power to change this. Your grandfather tried to warn them. Now you can take that knowledge and make a different choice. I looked at her, her conviction igniting a spark of hope within me. You're right. I can't let the past dictate my future. I have to confront it. With that resolve, we gathered the documents and made our way back to the main room, our hearts pounding with the knowledge we had uncovered. The history of Willow Creek was not just a series of events. The air was thick with an unsettling weight as Mia and I stood on the edge of the clearing, the trees looming around us like sentinels. The history of Willow Creek pulsed beneath our feet, a dark undercurrent just waiting to be unleashed. I could feel the chill of the evening creeping into my bones, but it was more than just the temperature. There was something deeply unsettling about the place we were about to confront. Mia, are you sure about this? I asked, the doubt creeping into my voice despite my determination. What if we're wrong? What if this only makes things worse? She turned to me, her eyes reflecting both fear and resolve. Lucas, we've come too far to turn back now. The deaths, the calls. There has to be a way to stop this, and if it means confronting what happened here, then we have to do it. I nodded, but my stomach twisted at the thought. The ritual we planned to perform wasn't just an abstract idea, it was a chance to face the malevolent force that had gripped Willow Creek for decades. Yet, the more we uncovered about the past, the more it felt like we were digging our graves. We began to set up the small altar we brought with us, an assortment of items we hoped would appease whatever spirit had been wronged all those years ago. As Mia arranged the candles, I pulled out the tattered journal I had been carrying, filled with notes from our research. Look at this, I said, flipping to a page where I'd noted the symbols we discovered in the old records. These are the sigils we need to draw in order to perform the ritual correctly. They were meant to protect the living and guide the lost souls. Mia examined the page with a furrowed brow. Do you think they'll work? What if we're just making things worse? We won't know unless we try, I replied, my voice steadier than I felt. The truth was, I was terrified, not just of what might happen during the ritual, but of my own past and how it entwined with the dark history of Willow Creek. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows in the clearing, a sudden breeze swept through, sending shivers down my spine. It's getting colder, Mia said, her voice barely above a whisper. I don't like this. Neither do I admitted. But we can't back down now. I took a deep breath, trying to steady my racing heart. Let's light the candles and begin. We lit the candles, their flickering flames casting eerie shadows against the trees. The air around us felt charged, as if the very fabric of reality was bending. Are you ready? I asked, my voice trembling slightly. Mia nodded, her face pale but determined. Let's do this. We began to draw the symbols in the dirt, our hands moving carefully as we traced the lines. I could feel the energy around us shifting, a palpable tension that seemed to hum in the air. As we finished the last symbol, I stepped back, surveying our work. It's done, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. Now what? Mia asked, her eyes darting around the clearing. Do we just wait? I nodded, though uncertainty gnawed at me. We wait for a sign. For the spirits to respond. I could feel the weight of the unknown pressing down on us, and I wished I could shake the sense of dread that had settled in my gut like a stone. Moments passed, each second stretching into eternity. The wind rustled through the trees, whispering secrets I couldn't quite grasp. Then, without warning, the atmosphere shifted, a sudden chill swept through the clearing, and the candles flickered violently. What's happening? Mia exclaimed, her voice tight with fear. I don't know. I shouted, panic rising within me. The ground beneath us seemed to vibrate, a low rumble echoing through the clearing. I stumbled back, my heart racing. We have to hold on. Suddenly, the air thickened, and I heard a low whispering, barely audible but unmistakable. Help us, the voice was haunting, filled with a desperation that sent chills down my spine. Mia, did you hear that? I asked, my voice shaking. She nodded, eyes wide with terror. What do we do? What do they want? I swallowed hard, trying to steady my breath. I think we need to ask them. To tell us what we can do to help. Though the words felt inadequate, I knew we had to try. Spirits of Willow Creek, I called out, my voice trembling. We are here to listen. We want to understand your pain and help you find peace. My heart raced as I said those words, half expecting something to leap from the shadows and consume us. The whispering grew louder, swirling around us like a tempest. Reclaim, it echoed, the word resonating in my bones. What does that mean? Mia cried, grasping my arm. Reclaim what? I don't know, I admitted, frustration bubbling within me. But it sounds like they're asking for something lost. Maybe we need to uncover more of the truth. As if in response, the ground trembled again, and a single candle flickered out, plunging part of the clearing into darkness. Lucas, I don't like this. Mia shouted, her voice rising in panic. Stay calm, I urged, though my own voice was unsteady. We need to stay focused. We can't let fear take over. Just then, the wind picked up, howling through the trees, and I felt an overwhelming urge to look deeper into the forest. There's something there, I said, pointing toward a shadowy outline among the trees. I think it's leading us. Are you crazy? Mia exclaimed, her eyes wide. It could be dangerous. But it could also be the answer we need, I insisted. We can't turn back now. We have to follow. With a hesitant nod, Mia took a deep breath, and we moved toward the shadowy figure, our hearts pounding in unison. As we approached, the outline began to take shape, a crumbling stone archway, overgrown with vines and moss. It looked ancient, and I felt a strange pull toward it. What is this place? Mia asked, her voice barely a whisper. I don't know, I admitted, but it feels significant. As we stepped through the archway, the world around us shifted. The air was charged with energy, and the whispers intensified, swirling in a cacophony around us. Reclaim, reclaim, they urged, echoing in my mind. Lucas, what do we do? Mia's voice trembled as she gripped my arm. We need to find out what we have to reclaim, I replied, my mind racing. Maybe it's the history of this place, the truth about what happened to the founders. As if sensing my thoughts, the air grew heavier, and the whispers morphed into a single voice, a woman's voice, filled with sorrow. You must remember. You must understand. Understand what? I shouted, desperation lacing my words. What do you want from us? Justice, for the lost, the voice replied, fading into the wind. What does that mean? Mia asked, panic creeping into her tone. I think it means we need to confront the truth of the past, I said, my determination solidifying. We need to find out what really happened during that ritual and why it went wrong. Mia took a step back, fear etched on her face. But how? We've already uncovered so much. What else is there? Maybe it's not just about the ritual, I said, piecing the fragments of information together. Maybe it's about the people. The founders, their intentions. We need to dig deeper into their stories. The whispers grew louder, swirling around us as if urging us on. Reclaim, reclaim, they echoed, the urgency palpable. Mia took a deep breath, her expression shifting from fear to resolve. Then let's do it. Let's uncover the truth. For them, for everyone. As we stood before the archway, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. Whatever lay ahead, we would confront it together. We would reclaim the history of Willow Creek, no matter the cost. The spirits were counting on us, and we wouldn't let them down. With our hearts racing, we stepped forward into the unknown, ready to face whatever awaited us in the shadows. As the air in the cemetery thickened with tension, I could feel every heartbeat echo in my ears. The old gravestones loomed around us, casting long shadows that seemed to dance in the flickering light of the candles we had placed in a circle. Mia stood beside me, her face pale and determined, clutching a small piece of parchment that contained the ancient incantation we hoped would finally put an end to this nightmare. Lucas, are you sure about this? She whispered, her voice barely audible over the rustling leaves. What if we're making things worse? I turned to her, searching her eyes for an ounce of reassurance. We have to try, Mia. If we don't confront this head-on, it'll only get worse. We've seen what happens when we ignore it. She nodded, though I could see the doubt lurking behind her strong facade. Okay. Let's just be careful. We took our places within the circle, the dust of the cemetery clinging to our shoes, and I inhaled deeply, the scent of earth mingling with the faint metallic tang of fear. The wind picked up, whipping around us as if nature itself was warning us against what we were about to do. But we had come too far to turn back now. Ready? I asked, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside me. Mia nodded again, and together we began to recite the incantation. The words felt foreign on my tongue, heavy with the weight of centuries. As our voices rose, I felt a strange energy envelop us, an invisible thread binding our fates to the past we were trying to confront. By the souls of those lost, we seek to mend. Suddenly, the phone rang, slicing through our incantation. It was a shrill, persistent sound that sent chills racing down my spine. I hesitated, torn between the ritual and the looming dread of that cursed call. Mia, I started, but she grabbed my arm, her eyes wide. Answer it. It might be important, she urged. I shook my head, feeling the weight of our choices hanging in the balance. No, we need to focus on this. It's the only way. But the ringing grew louder, more insistent, as if it was mocking our efforts. Finally, I relented, stepping out of the circle and reaching for my phone. My hands trembled as I swiped to answer. Hello? I said, my voice barely above a whisper. Lucas, the voice on the other end, was familiar, yet distorted, sending a wave of nausea through me. It was a voice I hadn't heard in years, one I thought I'd buried deep within the recesses of my mind. You need to listen. Who is this? I demanded, my heart racing. What do you want? Your past is catching up with you, the voice continued, a hint of sorrow lacing the words. You can't escape it. I felt my breath itch. Is this about the accident? I told you, I didn't mean for it to happen. I could feel the weight of guilt crushing me, the memory of that fateful night flooding back with a vengeance. Lucas, it's not just about that. You have to face the truth. You're not just a victim, you're a part of this. The voice faded into static, leaving me reeling. My mind raced back to the whispers of the townsfolk, the stories about the founders, the dark history that had woven itself into the fabric of Willow Creek. I turned back to Mia, who was watching me, her face a mask of concern. What happened? She asked, stepping closer, her eyes searching mine for answers. It's someone I thought I lost a long time ago, I stammered, the weight of the revelation pressing down on me. They're telling me that I have to confront my past, that I can't just pretend it didn't happen. Mia's brows furrowed in understanding. We can do this together. Whatever it is, we'll face it together. As I stepped back into the circle, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. Right. Let's finish this. We resumed our chant, but just as the words began to flow again, the ground trembled beneath our feet. The candles flickered wildly, and a cold wind swept through the cemetery, extinguishing them one by one until we were enveloped in darkness. Mia! I shouted, panic rising in my chest. What's happening? I don't know, she yelled back, her voice strained. Keep going. With every ounce of strength, we pushed forward, our voices rising in a desperate plea for redemption. The air crackled with energy, and I felt the ground shift beneath me, as if the spirits of the past were awakening. Suddenly, there was a blinding flash of light, and a figure emerged from the shadows. I could barely make out the form, but the familiarity of it struck me like a lightning bolt. Lucas, the figure said, its voice echoing with the weight of years. You've come to finish what was started. Mom? I stuttered, disbelief flooding my senses. The figure nodded, her eyes filled with a mixture of sorrow and pride. You must make a choice, my son. The past cannot remain buried. You can either save the life of one from this town, or you can break the curse that has haunted us for generations. Choose wisely, the voice warned, fading into the shadows. In that moment, I felt the true weight of our actions. The lives of the townspeople rested on my shoulders, and I had to decide who would pay the price. Mia, we can't just let this happen again, I exclaimed, my mind racing. We can't choose one life over another. But what if it's the only way? She countered, her eyes pleading with me to see reason. If we don't do something, it could be even worse. The phone rang again, the sound cutting through the thick air like a knife. I hesitated, my heart pounding. What if we're wrong? What if this just makes things worse? We have to save someone, Lucas. We can't let the cycle continue. Mia insisted, desperation creeping into her voice. I felt torn, the weight of the decision pressing down on me like a vice. I could feel the eyes of the town upon us, the legacy of the past entwining with our present. We can't sacrifice anyone, I whispered, my voice breaking. We need to find another way. But the voices of the past grew louder, drowning out my thoughts. The wind howled around us, and the atmosphere thickened with the weight of countless souls lost to the curse. Mia, we need to make our choice now, I shouted, desperation clawing at my throat. She looked at me, tears glistening in her eyes. I don't want to lose anyone else, Lucas. But if we don't do this, we could lose everyone. The phone rang one last time, the shrill sound reverberating in my mind as I grasped for the truth. I picked it up, my heart racing as I answered. Hello? I said, my voice trembling. Lucas, you have to trust in your heart, the voice said, filled with an urgency that shook me to my core. You know what you must do. I felt the weight of the decision crashing down on me, the realization that there would be no escaping the consequences. I can't endanger anyone else. I won't. The voice fell silent, leaving me standing at the precipice of fate. Mia, we have to do it. We have to save someone, I said, my voice firm despite the fear gnawing at my insides. We can't let history repeat itself. Tears streamed down her cheeks as she nodded. Then let's do it. For everyone. As we stepped forward, ready to confront the darkness, I could feel the energy swirling around us, the spirits of those lost guiding us. By the souls of those lost, we seek to mend, we began once more, the words spilling from our lips like a desperate prayer. But as we finished, a deafening silence engulfed us. The air crackled with tension, and I felt the ground shake beneath my feet. In that moment, I knew we had made our choice. We had chosen to save a life, but the repercussions would be dire. The earth split open, and the ground beneath us crumbled, the cemetery collapsing into chaos. Mia! I cried, reaching for her as the darkness swallowed us whole. The last thing I saw was her outstretched hand, and then everything went black. When I awoke, I was lying on the cold ground, the sun shining through the trees. The cemetery was gone, replaced by a vast emptiness. Mia? I called out, panic rising in my chest. But there was no answer. And then I understood. In our desperate attempt to save one life, we had unleashed a nightmare far worse than we could have imagined. The curse was stronger than ever, and the phone would never stop ringing.